Where has evil gone? Banished from earth by the enlightened and worldly wise? Or hidden behind psychological and sociological terms that make it respectable? Not much to worry about? No, evil is still here, working in the dark corners of the human heart. This is Encounter. To many, the problem of evil seems unsolvable. Others have trivialized it by blaming it all on the devil. Still others solve the problem by simply denying evil exists. In a very practical sense, evil is a problem to all of us because it reaches into the center of our everyday living. Our greatest problem with evil is our confusion as to what evil really is. We turn evil into good and good into evil. History has taught us that. Evil affects us all, and we can't afford not being serious about it. In The Hidden Face of Evil, Dr. Zamora reminds us that if we are to live noble lives, we must know what and where evil is.
No one seems to see evil anymore. Very few people talk about it. Some intellectuals treat it as superstitions of our ancestral past. We have such a time deciding the difference between truth and error. We don't know anymore what is a lie or what is the truth. In fact, it seems that we don't care about those things anymore. Tolerance, well, it has become the highest value. That means the person who tolerates a lie, aberrant, or even evil behavior defines true compassion and authentic humanity. And of course, the worst sin of the age is to disagree or disapprove of someone's destructive thinking or behavior. He who dares to say something or someone is evil is considered bigoted, intolerant, and ignorant. The prophet Isaiah described our age when he wrote, "Those who call good evil and evil good." Now this week, we saw the annual Oscar presentations on television. The event reportedly cost $100 million, with an estimated billion people watching worldwide. Amazing. It's amazing how one event creates such interest. Television, exporting American values to the world. And what values? Now, the following day, most radio talk show hosts talked and critiqued the Oscars. Larry Elder from KBC said that he and his visiting friends had gone to a very popular restaurant to find that they were the only ones there. Everybody was back home watching the Oscars. And people called in and raved about the splendor of the occasion. They commented on the sophistication and magnificent behavior of the stars, their dress, their demeanor, such elegance, acceptance speeches that were so human, so grateful. It was a night of magnificence. However, a few callers reminded people that at best this was another Hollywood production. The stars looked their best because that is what they are paid for when performing. They reminded people what Hollywood produced and the kind of lives so many of these stars live. Their sophistication was a facade. Their elegance came from the expensive clothing shops. They tried to remind people that Hollywood is an illusion. It is in the business of illusion.
Well, it is the business of illusion. But it's also a powerful media for molding minds, isn't it? I know, unfortunately, it doesn't always present the best picture of life. Occasionally, maybe not often enough, it does make an impression with some films that can turn your mind towards the noble and the good you find in man, don't you? Don't you think?
I do. There is some merit there. There's no question about that, and I certainly wouldn't minimize that. But what I was trying to show with Hollywood is what we have done with life. We have fantasized it. It is no longer real. We have found a way to cover up the realities that we find in real life. We've tried to turn life into a pleasantry. We want easy explanations for why things go wrong. We want easy remedies like what you get at the local pharmacy or the doctor's office. But like Hollywood, this is an illusion. Because if you take a good look, many of the people we see on the screen are not really successful human beings. There are lives there that are tragic, they're disastrous. On the surface, they make us think everything is just great. But they hide, not always too well, the ugly part of life that in some cases is evil. But that is what society has done. And let me add, sadly, but let me add, the church as well. We all, it seems, have learned to deal with evil in one way or another.
And that is one thing that always bothered me about the church. It seems, at least when you look through history, that it's tried to justify its actions even when they are contrary to what Jesus taught. What I've read in church history, the church doesn't really stand, with clean hands all the time. The question is, why is that?
Boy, that is a big question. Why is it? I mean, you would expect the church to represent Christ and to certainly keep away from anything that was evil. And how do we explain it? Well, we may have our explanations, this and that, but when it really comes, down to it, I mean, in terms of trying to explain and answer that question, it's the human heart, isn't it? When Isaiah says that the human heart is desperately evil and who can know it, well, he uttered a great truth. Now, none of us want to be thought of as evil. So for centuries, people have been trying to explain their behavior. The church has done the same thing. Today, we give all our evil doings sophisticated and learned names. Evil then doesn't sound so bad. It even seems to cease being evil. Christians, Catholics as well as Protestants, have persecuted even to death in the name of all that was holy. But it was explained as the work of God. And now we look back there and we see that it was evil. There was no reason to take anybody's life because they didn't believe the way others believed. Then their actions were baptized. They were given holy sanction. But we haven't changed. We still politic in the name of Christ. We run the church as if it were a corporation or government agency. And as to the individual Christian, well, he's not exempt from manipulation, plotting, and maneuvering to have his own way. I have no other explanation for some of the church's behavior other than that the insidious intrusion of evil in her midst. For evil hides itself wherever people give it refuge. Today, it has won its greatest triumph with some in science and learning who deny its existence. It's a superstition that has had its day. They say, after all, we know what's wrong with us, and we're going to fix it.
Well, that sounds quite arrogant, doesn't it? The mystery of evil has kept great thinkers throughout the centuries trying to understand it. And I don't think you can do away with evil just by declaring that it doesn't exist. The terrible things that happen in this world demands a better explanation than that.
It is a pretty arrogant statement to look at the mystery of evil and that to say it doesn't exist or it does exist or whatever. People who are learned sometimes think they know everything. But a person all he has to do is look out into the world and see the hatred that is there. It's almost uncanny. It should alert us to something sinister at work. For instance, a Jordanian soldier guns down 7 Israeli schoolgirls and wounds another 6 in a rampage on what is known as the Island of Peace. Kind of a misnomer. This Island of Peace is along the border between Israel and Jordan. He chases them down a hillside covered with yellow mustard blossoms, while other good schoolgirls watch in terror. An 8th grade survivor said the gunman had a demonic grin on his face. But really he only reflected the hatred still festering in that land that has been called holy. And it is a hatred so deep and dreadful that there seems to be no healing or solution for it. They said that the soldier really had no political motives. He just hated, that's all. And then just this week we heard of another bizarre and macabre incident. 39 young men in matching dark pants and tennis shoes were found in a luxurious mansion in a place called Rancho Santa Fe near San Diego. These young men were, 18 to 24 years old. They were computer programmers. And they belonged to a cult. And then you add this incident to the suicide of 5 members of the Order of the Solar Temple in Saint Casimir in Quebec. These people belonging to that order, they believed that suicide would transport them to a new life on a planet called Sirius. And then you have this event that is reminiscent of the Jonestown mass suicide and murder of 900 people. Jim Jones, the leader of this group, had urged his followers to drink cyanide-laced grape punch, and they drank it, and they died.
Well, these people joining these groups, they must have been looking for something good. I mean, and they must have thought everything was all right. Then it turns evil. It gets twisted. Why is it these people can't see these things happening?
Because that's the character of evil. And that's why it's arrogance to say, well, these things that are happening, these bizarre, macabre things that are happening, they're cultural, psychological, sociological phenomenon. No, the character of evil is that it's devious. We don't understand it. We don't give any thought to it. And then it turns on us, you see. We've gotten so used to explaining the horrid ways we treat people and allow as normal that we can't see evil. But, I was thinking about this in the light of the events that have taken place in Los Angeles the last several years. We have sociologists and urban planners and the rest of them who try to explain the riots, that took place after the Rodney King beating and his trial. Now, it was a brutal thing for the officers to beat him as they did. that can't be minimized. It wasn't the right thing to do. But was it the beating that caused the riots? Or was it the jury's decision that caused the riots? You know, we blame everything and everybody, but nobody blames Rodney King. Now, I don't want to be misunderstood, which I'm sure I probably will by some who are listening. And I don't want to excuse what they did to him, not in the least. But when we sit back and look at it, we say, well, he was the innocent bystander. He was breaking the law. He was under the influence of drugs and drink. He not only had violated the law before, but he violated it after he was awarded this large amount of money. And when you look back at his life, he was living an evil life. And he is responsible for what ensued. Had he been not influenced by those things, by the fact that he allowed himself to be driven or pulled or influenced by evil, that would have never taken place. And we forget that. We don't want to see the evil around us because we don't want to see, or we only want to see what we want to see. We see on television a truck driver being beaten close to death, and it is excused or defended in court as an individual being taken up by the atmosphere and the attitude of the riots. How could they help it? This was a psychological explanation for a deed that threatened to take the life of an innocent human being. There was no evil seen in that. But what was done there was evil. The Menendez brothers brutally killed their mother and father with shotguns. And the first trial resulted in a hung jury. Why couldn't the jury make up its mind with all of that evidence? Because as one jurywoman said, I felt so sorry for them. They had lost their father and mother. How could I decide that they were guilty? That's convoluted thinking. Did anyone see it as evil? They lost their mother and father because they killed them. We don't see evil because we don't think there are things that are evil. They're just bad behavior.
Well, I think you're still going to have some people say that bad behavior is not the result of evil, but of a bad environment or cultural upbringing. And I guess that's why their lawyer argued that they were driven to it by their father and the way he had treated them, which I don't think was proved.
Yeah. Yet there have been individuals badly treated by their parents that didn't kill their parents. And add to that these very same people would never have thought of killing their parents or any other person for that matter, because they saw it as evil. Some of the most brutal murders have occurred in the most loving and caring families by members of that family. The motive was evil, and the murders had no rhyme or reason. For instance, when a father takes his child by the feet and swings his little head against the sidewalk, you think it's just bad behavior? Now, this really happened. But the reason was evil. The father was brought up in a caring home. There was something in him that liked to destroy. It was that evil. And how do you explain the Holocaust? You think it was just hatred for Jews? Why hatred for Jews? It is one thing to kill them, but to torture them before they killed them. The German people made lampshades of the Jewish human skins taken from their cadavers. They were the keepers there. They used these people to study the art of torture, not merely to learn how to inflict pain, but in order to use the skill to rob men and women of their manhood and womanhood, to dehumanize them, forcing them to deny their own integrity. They did that not because they were Nazis. They did that because they were evil. Nazism awakened the dark side of their human nature. They gave in while others were willing to die rather than to succumb to the evil. Scott Peck, in his most impressive book, The Road Less Traveled, is clear about this dark side of human nature. If allowed, this dark side will follow the lead of evil into the most awful things. A comforting picture of human nature is to see ourselves as sheep that have gone astray. Unfortunately, sheep are not all they're made out to be. Just ask a shepherd about them sometime. We're more like rebels caught with weapons in our hands. And if we're ever to find our way back to our true selves, we must realize this. The only way to defeat evil is to recognize it and fight it. We keep consoling ourselves that people capable of such horrors as we've mentioned have to be psychopathic. They're sick, and instead of being condemned, they should be understood, pitied, and treated for their illness. So evil becomes a sickness. Its prevention is a problem of hygiene, and its cure a problem of therapy. Now, I won't deny that mental illness exists, but even that is the product of evil, perpetrated, unfortunately, on the innocent. However, when we begin to feel superior to such unfortunate humanity, we'd better remind ourselves that all humanity is of one kind. The most fantastic abnormalities we see in others are in reality the expression of impulses and attitudes we all share. There, but for the grace of God go I, is a phrase for us to well remember. And remember that evil hides itself even in our sophistication and well-bred circumstances. However, we are of the same nature as the thief, the murderer, and the aberrant. Fortunately, some of us have had the will not to follow the pull of the dark side. We are given examples of persons that have plummeted the depths of degradation, and they reveal to us what is hidden within ourselves. It matters not whether I work in a tie or coat or greasy jeans, whether I am a professor or a farmer, doctor or mechanic. Evil will stalk me and beckon the dark side within me to follow. But we must not make the mistake of thinking that evil is trivial. It costs dearly to follow it.
My question, and probably everybody's who's listening, is how can you be protected? I mean, what do we do with that dark side of our nature? In a moment, Dr. Zamora will return with his closing thoughts. Those of you who have listened regularly to Dr. Zamora know that his studies and presentations are unique in that they reach into the heart of every issue. Recently, someone wrote us and said, almost every sentence is an invitation to think and ponder. Someone else said, I appreciate his tapes because I can study the ideas and use them to share his insights with individuals seeking a thoughtful faith. Here again is Dr. Zamora.
That is the question, and a very important question. How can one be protected from such a force as evil? In the Lord's Prayer, Jesus taught his disciples to pray, deliver us from evil, as the King James Version reads. It really says, and deliver us from the evil one. So prayer reminds us about God, but it also reminds us that we need his wisdom and his power. It makes us aware that in this world, forces opposed to God seek to enlist me in defying the Creator and King of the universe. This is why Jesus prayed. This is why he encouraged his disciples to do the same. They found their strength there, in prayer. Jesus was very much aware of the forces of evil in the world. You know, he knew that evil existed because he had met it face to face and he had conquered it. And there's nothing so clear in the Bible that we must face the arch enemy every day we live. That is evil. Ephesians clearly states We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against the powers, against the world rulers of this present darkness, against the spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. And there is no mistake in this language. To know this is the first step in finding protection from evil. And Paul says in 2 Corinthians that we're not ignorant of the devices of evil. Jesus exposed them to the whole world. And we're not ignorant of what evil is. We have seen it in the pages of the gospel. We have seen them in its attempt to move Jesus from the will of God, and in the subtle devious ways in which it endeavored to swallow up his disciples. We have seen it at the cross, trying with all its fury to defeat Jesus, but it failed. And we know that no matter how flattering and pleasant it is, it shows itself. It has fangs and claws that dig and cut and kill. Evil is a lie. It clothes itself with respectability, even with piety and religion. As Shakespeare wrote about evil in The Merchant of Venice, so may the outward shows be least themselves. The world is still deceived with ornament. In law, what plea so tainted and corrupt, but being seasoned with a gracious voice, obscures the show of evil? In religion, what damned error, but some sober brow will bless it and prove it with a text, hiding the grossness with fair ornament. That is why the only protection is Jesus, because he exposed evil and defeated it. He said, "Fear not, I have overcome the world." And so your safety and mine is to stay close to him, to live by his words, to follow his example. For Paul says that he has been made our wisdom and power and righteousness. It means we don't have to guess about this thing called life. We can live it in the assurance that we have a conqueror as our leader, as our guide, as our Savior, and our safety is in him. We can walk in the world unafraid. Yes, we can. And we can live as those who are overcome not by their deeds, but by his deeds. All we need to do is claim that victory, and we will do his will. He will enter your life, and he will give you all you need to live in his name.
Thank you for joining us this half hour. We hope this edition of Encounter has brought you insight and inspiration. Be sure to tune in next week. And until then, may God's joy be with you and your family. Remember, in Christ, life was meant to be lived to the fullest.